Hello YouTube, it's Yolanda from Rush Dimension here with Jacob's first place deck profile. What were you playing and tell us a bit more?
Alright, I've been rambling on about Tearlaments for quite some time, and unfortunately due to some work circumstances I haven't been pushing out videos as much as I'd like to, and as I get videos recorded and want to get to the editing section, new stuff happened over time. So basically the meta changed, new cards came out, so every time the deck evolved after I recorded a profile, so it was pointless for me uploading the older profiles, which are kind of redundant, and there's been some editing done to the deck already. So what happened was, it may look like we're doing a back-to-back one here on the same mat that Yolanda got at the OTS Championships. So her profile that you'll see first was last week locals, she got first place, which was the profile that you guys will watch before this one. And my one is 3 weeks ago. I got first place at our locals, and I got 7th place, let's call it top 8 to make it sound better, at the OTS Championship. Didn't go home with anything. We managed to get a mat off the raffle. We didn't win this mat, so we basically rolled the dice, and that's it. But not to ramble on too much, let's just get into the profile, talk more about some of the tech cards that I went through.
Yes.
And things like that. So it's a bit weird for me to do this upside down, but it's better for you guys to see what I've been
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so for Tearlaments so far, still stock standard, you'll play 3 of everything, because you want to draw it, you want to see it, you want to mill into it as much as possible. Let's go with you want to kind of get to these guys the most. If you want to drop one of them, this is kind of the best one to drop. The rest is kind of more difficult. In a more modified version, something like the branded version and so forth, you'll drop your Rhino Hearts, because then they aren't as let's call it reliable.
Yeah, when you have another normal summon, basically.
Correct, when there's a better normal summon than the Rhino Heart. Unfortunately, you do still need Rhino Heart unless you're playing King of the Swamps, which maybe I'll upload that profile so you guys can see what I did there, to still go into the Collider Heart, if that is still an option for you to fuse into. So that's basically it for the Tearlaments part.
But yes, 3 of each, because you actually want to mill into them.
Correct, yes, like I said. And then going into the dangers, unfortunately I only had 2 danger Nessies. I would run 3 if I had, but what I did do is I went with 2 Bigfoot in the place, just to have something to be able to get discarded off. Let's go with Super Poly going second, so you can pop an extra card. Or maybe if I didn't play Twisters in this list, but one of my lists had Twin Twisters in, so this was actually pretty good then. And so I would actually swap out the second Bigfoot for the 3rd Danger Nessie. It's in the post, will be in the next profile. And then just the smaller ones, obviously we need sometimes I clash a lot with these because they're both beast, unfortunately. That's why running less of the Bigfoot
To go into the Curious Play.
There we go. So that's the only balls up that I realized at a later point. But Bigfoot still being brilliant. And then my personal choices, I went with 1 Chupacabra. Reason for this was you mill a lot, as any Tearlament player knows. So there's a big chance that you mill into a lot of your dangers.
Any player knows.
Correct. So if you can either search this off your Nessie if your hand count is low, so that if they do hit the Chup, then you can at least still get a body off it if you don't get the draw and the summon. So and that's basically just the idea that I went around with that. And I think I won one of my games where I actually just I top decked a Nessie. I let them hit it off, well, obviously discarded it, grabbed the Chup, discarded this, and then went into the Bigfoot, and that was kind of one of the OTK pushes that I needed. So that was pretty good. And furthermore, nothing else really to say about the dangers. The only other 2 monsters I did play was, unfortunately, my previous list that I didn't showcase now because of time restraints, was this was a Fairy Tale Snow, which most of you guys obviously played. And then I also went with the 1 Gizmo Karocha. I was a bit nervous playing more than 1. Shout out to Jesse Cotton who thought of playing more than 1, or let's go with 3, give more or less, to be able to mill a lot of the deck. I was just a bit nervous milling into or banishing a lot of stuff that you kind of need, and then just sitting on a bunch of big bodies that really, it's a bit low key. If the attack was a bit higher on this card, then I wouldn't have much of a worry. But just playing with the 1, it's I kind of saw it when I needed to see it, and that was quite cool. So either if you mill into it, draw into it, that's fine. There was the 1 incident where I played against the same Labrynth guy that Yolanda played against. I beat him. Shout out to Brandon. So basically I had this in my opening hand, and he set his cards. End of his turn had one monster, the lady, on the field, and I chained this to the end phase, summoning this and banishing the top 8 of cards of my deck. And then when I checked the cards that I banished all 3 copies of my Halfness, which was a bit nerve-wracking. So I started off only having 2 fusions in my own turn and 2 fusions in my opponent's turn, but somehow I still managed to get through the game like that. Redoer put a lot of work into that matchup. If you don't know what to use Redoer, and it's basically controlled the game with Redoer and your Orochi, because you're grabbing a lot of traps, you're bouncing a lot of cards. It's pretty good you simplify the game state for them, because they have to reset some of the cards, and they can't use it in the same turn unless it's off trap trick. And so then you're shuffling all the cards back the whole time. Not shuffling, you're placing it on the top deck. They're putting them on top deck basically, so that you're guaranteeing yourself a trap card every time.
But it was a thinker going against the Labyrinth, because it resets and you can't chain to traps that activate because of the monster on the field.
A bit of a disclaimer is that I was zero prepared for any Labyrinth or any Runic players. I had no prior background. I played in one of the previous tournaments in the same week that I won the locals. I played that weekend. That was my first time I played against a Labyrinth player. That's where I got most of the ideas came from. I have no main deck outs to either their Mystic Mine or the field spell that they have outside from like the Galaxy Cyclone that I main, and I will get to that part.
Yes. Okay.
So that was basically it. And then obviously go second cards. We're still playing 3 Super Poly. I figured that
Secrets.
you will side out the Super Polys most of the time going against Labrynths. Labrynths. You'll keep them in against Labrynths, mind you, because summoning the Gizmic Orochis will have 2 darks on the field, and you can just fuse away one of the ladies that are on the field, and then they don't get additional effects off their traps or field spell or some crap like that. But apart from that, this is very redundant against other Tearlaments players unless you know where to hit. So I kind of either drop all 3 or drop 1 or 2 of them when you get into a side deck.
And luckily you didn't see it against me.
I didn't see it against any Sprite players, unfortunately. When I played against the week that I won, I played 2 Sprite players. It was Yolanda herself, one in time, and I played against our buddy Chris. And he unfortunately activated Sprite starter, and then time got called a couple of seconds later, and that was one of those moments.
That's the thing about Tearlaments.
That's unfortunately, Tearlaments take a while because you have to think about the routes that you're taking.
And then they play in your turn as well.
Especially if there is disruption. And the way that the deck was built with snow included, it was pretty cool that playing against Chris, and he can actually drop a comment there if you remember this part. He DD crowed me twice, as in stopped 2 of the 3 fusions that needed to happen. I did have instant fusion in my hand, and so that was the one way of extending. But apart from that, I had all the dangers. So I still managed to put the normal board with the Sprite Elf and the Griffin on the field, and still had the Merlin in graveyard. With even though he disrupted me twice through 2 crows, so that was pretty cool. Seeing that the deck could play through something like that.
Yeah.
Furthermore, I got veiled a lot. I got impermed a lot on the Kit Kalos. That is unfortunate. You can't do anything about it. Sometimes call by helps if you drew it in and the guy drops a veiler. It doesn't help when he drops an imperm, and it does sometimes help that you use one of your fusions then to go into the second Kit Kalos and then use the effect to either the mill 8 combo that most people try and get through. So that's just to cover that part, and to get into the rest of the spells. So those are just the go second cards. Getting to the spells, I only have 2 field spells, unfortunately. I did play the terraforming just to cover the 3rd spot, but just to get out of droll range for most of the part, I'd recommend playing 3, obviously, like most people know. But this worked a lot. When like for top decking, this is fine. It's actually really not necessary if you don't see it. It's just almost like a win more when you're trying to get through a board, and it's a great starter if you do see it in your opening hand, and it helps you play around a lot of stuff. And my personal tech for this week was the Foolish Burial Goods. So this was the evening that I won the locals. This was the Branded in High Spirits, along with the 1 copy of the Shrouded Dragon, and then also in the extra deck you had the Death Frog. and that also works 100%. I do recommend you try it out if you haven't tried it already. It works brilliantly. I tried something new. I went over to this just so that you can kind of, the idea is that when you mull, because I'm just going to pop out the rest of the cards here on the field quickly. So
yeah, I actually really like this idea.
So preemptively, if you have everything in your hand, you can use this to dump a Galaxy Cyclone, knowing if you're going against someone that plays like Mystic Mine, or the Labyrinth Field spell was another thing that so you have this in your graveyard for when the card comes to the field. The other idea was this. This was a copy of Metal Foes Fusion. The problem with Metal Foes Fusion is that when you draw it, it's a bit difficult to use, and you kind of have to rely on either your dangers having it sniped out of your hand for it to hit the graveyard, where you can actually still use this and fuse off the field, and you still get the shuffle back and draw that you would get from Metal Foes Fusion, as well as it's an out to Mystic Mine if the field spells up. So that was the thinking behind that. And then obviously you still play the one call by. I have mixed feelings. I've spoke about this for a while now. Mixed feelings about playing the Instant Fusion. It's a great starter card. It's a great top deck. It gets the whole engine going. If your whole field has been played through and you only have Instant Fusion in your following turn, you can reset kind of the whole field basically. But I kind of want to try and swap this out for a Foolish Burial and see if that doesn't do a bit extra than what this does, because a lot of the times in time I'd side this out, obviously, because you don't want to burn yourself for 1,000 and then wait for your opponent to just either slow play you to infinity, and that's kind of the thinking behind that. But otherwise, still very good card. I'd still use this. I enjoyed this card a lot in the Predator Plant branded, or just Predator Plants in general, and so I have a very good background with this card itself. And just the 3 traps that I did have was 2 Salics and the 1 Gnome. So Gnomes
also targets for the Foolish Goods.
Yes. So the idea here was when you get to the side deck, you'll see some of the sprites that I had there. But Gnomes in the main was actually pretty good. Although the new sprite version where they don't play a lot of the frogs anymore, where they either go with a Tri-Brigade variant or the Live Twin variant like Yolanda did. This doesn't really help as much for that, because they have multiple ways of just special summoning cards either from the deck.
I agree.
And then
you've used it both times against me, and it didn't matter.
Although this card helps a lot for people that want a cowboy for game, and that you kind of want to use this against your mirror match against the Tearlaments, so they don't dweller you to death, because dweller actually kills this deck hard. Everything happens in the graveyard during both turns. The only thing that doesn't happen in the graveyard is your dangers if they don't get sniped, and you can't really rely on that, although it is there for you to be able to play around stuff. Salik, obviously my favorite trap in the whole lineup, along with one of the others that are in the side deck that I'll get to in a moment. So starting off,
so these are also your targets to set with Griffin.
Yes,
because you are playing the Curious Griffin.
I do play Griffin. When we get to the side deck, I'll explain some of the cards that I use there. Griffin helped me set Super Poly. It helps me set Salik if it's in the graveyard once I've molded off either General Milling or the Foolish Burial. I don't really set the Gnomes off that, because if it's in the graveyard, then you can just banish it from the graveyard. Obviously. But the reason why I like Gnomes so much is that when someone drops a Dark Ruler on you, when you've it's one of those blind games where you don't know what you're playing against, then I'll kind of go to Redoer as well if I manage to get to it, and then this helps me play around the Dark Ruler, because you'll chain this and then you can chain your Redoer, and then you'll have a monster to be able to continue in the next turn. And although your fusions won't happen because the card resolves, unfortunately, your Redoer comes back and you can continue stealing cards at the top of the deck. So
Alright.
That was the idea behind that. And obviously if you mull the Salik off this, it's a starter, and then the Salik is in the graveyard for you to grab off the Griffin. So, Alright, so let's go into the extra deck. One thing that I should mention as well is that I did still play the Griffin, and what I didn't use in this deck was basically what a lot of people would expect you to use, like the Eradicator, one of the virus cards, or something like Anti-Spell in the main, which is actually a pretty good idea. I tried going without those so that you don't need to side anything extra in or out. That was just my thinking. It's still a brilliant play. I'd try to go try and do something different and see what happens. That you try and practice all the alleys that are available, and then kind of see what works best for you, and using the Griffin to actually set anything else that is generally already in your deck kind of worked out better for me. Going into the extra deck,
All right.
played the one Mud Dragon. It's one of your starters, extenders slash super poly targets. I played 2 copies of the Kit Kalos. You can drop this to 1. I'm just a bit nervous dropping this to 1. I prefer playing 2 because it's a safety net, if you call it that. 1 Garuda, again, one of your extenders slash your draw power and a super poly target. So when you go into Dracostopelia, you always try and shuffle this back most of the time, depending on your hand, but a lot of the time you'll try and shuffle this back so your Dracostopelia is live. Your instant fusion is live. Your super poly is live.
Okay.
If you did draw into a super poly and haven't sided out, or whichever way, and just the 1 Collider Heart. For some time, for at least 3 weeks now, I played 2 copies of this because at some point I did have a unicorn in the extra deck, and it's kind of the same thing. It's basically unicorn but a fusion, and so I played 2 of these because a lot of the times when they put in a lot of effort, when you're playing against a good opponent, when they put in a lot of effort and they get this thing in the graveyard or banished it, then you can't get it back. And this is kind of your, let's go with one of the win cons in the deck. And
So do you prefer playing 1 or 2?
So for the most part, I'd actually play the second Garuda, so that your super polys are live most of the time. But for now,
having
this is
1
the best.
just in case,
Yes.
it's not always ideal.
You'll notice a lot of the times that when you do use the 1 Garuda in combo, and you don't have a, let's say you missed off the Merly Mill and you didn't fuse, and you've got a super poly on your side of the field, then there's nothing you can fuse with. There's nothing you can do in your extra deck. So then your super polys are dead from this point forward up until you summon your Dracostopelia.
Okay.
And that was kind of a bit nerve-wracking for me. So there was a time where I played 2 Dracostopelias as well, so you can get your fusions back into the deck. And it's also the reason why I play the substitute, so I can place the card back into the deck itself if I've milled into it or something like that. So that's basically that's one of my extra outs to Mystic Mine, and it's one of the ways I'd use to get this back into the extra deck so that your super polys are always live. For the Xyz, I played the Time Drift Redoer. MVP for me. I didn't summon Dweller once, which is kind of ridiculous. I didn't see a need to summon it. I didn't play against any Tearlament mirrors. I feel like if you summon this in either your first turn or a simplified game state against Tears, then you're winning that game definitely or indefinitely. But Redoer, most of the time when you summon Redoer,
You probably would have summoned Dweller if you played against Tearlaments.
Yes, you get a lot of value of the Redoer because you fuse with it when you detach the Siren, and you can also if you grab a spell, it's more like draw power, and it's also disruption if you draw a trap or grab a trap in the standby phase. Then for the links, we had the 1 Sprite Elf. 1 was fine. I went with 1 Dark. I barely used Dark, but it was there when I needed it. There was the 1 copy
You used
of...
it 2 times against me.
Yeah. There was the IP. Used this, I think, once. Didn't really see any other need for it, but it was there.
Yeah, you used that with the Sprite Elf against me to go into the card you're probably going to place there next.
Yeah, so I played the Bomber Dragon, seeing it is that... so I still played the Zero Boros because you do still mill, or you do still banish a lot off the Orochi. So this is kind of still a win con in its own right, but you can swap this out for something like any other link for
that's
Appaloosa,
obviously especially good
whatever.
against back row decks.
So you can drop this for like an Appaloosa or anything like that. You can actually, now that you mentioned, you can play Trisbana in this place, which will be a lot easier to make and get your back rows problem sorted in that sense. That might be something that I'll try next. But the Bomber Dragon was actually pretty good. When it blows the field, you get a fusion out of it, and because you made it with the IP, it's kind of indestructible, and it's something that you can keep using if you draw into a Halfness, if you either had a Halfness in hand, then you can special summon it in your opponent's turn, blow his field, and fuse off it. So that's kind of the idea behind playing that card. Right, then going into the side. The side deck
see what's cooking.
was the last thing that I put together. There was a lot of last minute changes that I made, which was kind of annoying because I was very unsure as to what, because in South Africa we have a very large pool of rogue players. You can play against anything at any given point in time, and if you're not prepared for it, you lose. And I wanted to just cover most bases. If I covered at least 70% of all matchups, then I'm happy with it. Even if it's just 3 cards instead of 6 that you usually side in against most of your games. So I went with 3 copies of Lancia, so that if you're going second, you have Lancia in your hand. If you try and fuse in your opponent's turn, and they try and crow your stuff or call by, then you can drop this and you can have your fusion resolve. This was also there for the Runic players, and it also helps a lot against when someone tries to evenly on your board. So that was the idea behind that. This was, I can actually not remember what it was before I changed it to this. I know it was there was some form of a trap or spell as well that I can't remember. Then I added in the 3 droplets, so that when you do go into a time situation, then you can side your rulers out for droplets, and you can at least lower the attack on the field to be able to punch for game. As well as some situations where, let's go with some of your Drytron boards are kind of difficult, so you need ruler and droplets to be able to play through your opponent's board, or to be able to have the highest chance of seeing your negates, to be able to play through the Vanity's ruler and so forth that they have on the field. We've got the 1 copy of Harpy's Feather Duster for the back row hate. Then we have also 3 copies of the Evenly Matched. Again, same story. I evenly lead a lot of people to sleep. Labyrinth, when this thing drops, it's done. They lose a lot of gas.
I remember, I think it was in the OTS tournament, you dog rulered me and then you evenly matched. I was like, yo.
So yeah, that works out a lot. My tech of choice is Grizel's Prison. I stole this off head-to-head battles. Shout out to Jen and Susu. Brilliant idea. When it came up, it's quite good. This locks your opponent into using summoning, attacking with Exceeds or Synchros up until the end of their next turn. So if you drop this in their turn, activate this, then they can't attack you even the turn that follows. So that was the idea behind that. So it's kind of a better version of D-Barrier, how I feel. You can still use D-Barrier if you feel that's something you need. I just prefer not using D-Barrier, because when you call fusion off it, then you kind of screw yourself. And this was just the next best thing. To follow from there, if you go against the Tearlament mirror matches, I had the 1 Tearlament's Cry, because this actually shuffles the card away instead of sending it to the graveyard or destroying it, so that it can trigger. And I did this against Brandon.
Is that the negate, the Omni negate?
This is the Omni negate, yes.
Yeah.
And then just the 2nd copy of the Gnomes, which barely came in, because you mill so much that if you don't see it in your opening hand going first, there's a high chance that you'll mill into it anyway, because you mill up anything between 8 and 15 cards. So there's that plus 20 chance that you'll either see this in your opening hand or mill into it whilst playing. And this is apart from the drawing factor that you'll get off your dangers and so forth. So,
any changes in the side that you will make, or do you think this is fine? Maybe just take this one out, you said?
Yes, that is. For now, I'm going to keep the crimes in. You can also use crime in if you see your opponent is using a lot of DD Crows, then you can just add this in as a Foolish Burial target. So that if you do mill into this or use your Foolish Burial Goods, my bad, then you can actually add back the card from the graveyard. And if you set this off the Griffin, then you already have a Tearlament in your hand that you can discard for this. So that kind of it worked in my favor. That it's not the fact that you have to send the card off the field like with the Sulik, or mill the card from deck that it can essentially get ashed off it. This will negate the card, destroy it, and negate the card, shuffle it back, then discard the Tearlament card from your hand.
Which then triggers.
Which will, so it's a bit different to work around, but I enjoyed playing the 1 copy. When the new support comes, then Foolish Burial Goods will be a lot better. Using more of the spells and so forth in the main deck to get to more of your traps, which is kind of good. Further, I think what I'm going to do is I'll most probably drop this and the Gazelle's Prisons. I have no idea what I'm going to drop it for though. Maybe the Catriciula's cards or something in that line. Something
but this is the flex spots then. Yeah,
basically this will be the flex spots for now, because Runic is going to be a bitch to play against. So I kind of want to keep this
maybe more back row 8.
And slightly more, like this was good for the most part, and the main deck 2 cards that I used was for, like I said, for the most part pretty good. But yes, I think adding more cards that hit back row, like something like twisters or
Yeah, I
anything
enjoyed
like
the
that.
twin twister because you can actually set it when you're going first.
So that's one way of going about it, and it's multiple. The problem that I do have, unfortunately, yes, the twisters actually do trigger the dangers as well, so that is a plus part. But the sad part is you have to discard a Tearlament off the twister, and unfortunately
You can weigh your options at that point.
That is the only thing I don't like about twister, but still a very good option. I might just play more dangers. It's literally just adding in the one more Nessie and having a bigger count. If you do play those type of cards in the side deck. Alright, and that is it.
Okay, that's it for today, guys. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Please like the video as always if you haven't already, and ding the notification bell so we can send you guys some notifications when the videos do go up eventually. And shout out to everyone at Locals for those who support for this awesome mat. Shout out to Brendan for hosting such awesome tournaments and for being an awesome shopkeeper and our main supplier of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that we get in South Africa. And we will see you next time.